Hello everyone, my name is Jenny, and today I want to share with you the incredible journey of learning English and how it can truly transform your life. I promise that if you stick with me through this video, you'll discover my secrets to becoming fluent in English in just 5 months. Beginning the journey. When I first started learning English, it felt like climbing a mountain with no end in sight. The grammar rules seemed endless, and vocabulary lists felt daunting. I often found myself frustrated, especially when comparing my progress to others. I'd watch videos of people speaking fluently, effortlessly expressing their thoughts and emotions, and it made me question my abilities. I remember one evening, sitting in my room, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of my insecurities. I thought, why can't I do this? But in that moment of despair, I realized that every great journey starts with small steps. I decided to focus on my own path instead of comparing myself to others. I learned that perseverance and patience are key, and that everyone progresses at their own pace. To overcome my struggles, I decided to make learning English a part of my everyday life. I transformed my room into a space filled with English, posters with motivational quotes, vocabulary cards, and my favorite English songs playing in the background. This space became my sanctuary, a place where I could immerse myself in the language without distractions. Music played a huge role in my learning journey. I discovered that songs could teach me not only vocabulary but also the rhythm and intonation of English. One of my favorites was "Shape of You" by Ed Sheeran. As I sang along, I felt the words resonate within me, and gradually, I began to internalize the language. I found joy in the process and realized that learning could be fun. The power of listening and speaking. One of the most important aspects of language learning is listening. I began tuning into English podcasts and YouTube channels focused on language learning, such as English Class 101 and BBC Learning English. Listening to native speakers helped me grasp the natural cadence of conversations. I paid attention to how they pronounced words, their expressions, and how they conveyed emotions through their tone. I also made it a point to practice speaking as much as possible. I found language exchange partners online through platforms like Tandem and HelloTalk. Engaging in conversations with them was initially daunting, but I learned that making mistakes was part of the process. Each interaction brought me closer to fluency, and I discovered that the more I practiced, the more confident I became. There were times when learning English felt monotonous. To keep my motivation alive, I set specific goals. For example, I aim to read 1 English book every month and watch at least 2 English movies per week. I also experimented with different types of content like TED Talks, cooking shows, and travel vlogs, which made learning feel less like a chore and more like an adventure. Whenever I felt stuck, I would remind myself why I started this journey. I envisioned my future self, confidently speaking English, traveling the world, and connecting with people from different cultures. This vision fueled my determination. As I progressed, I discovered the importance of community. I joined online forums and social media groups dedicated to English learners. Sharing my challenges and achievements with others who were on the same journey provided a sense of belonging. I found encouragement in their stories, and it reminded me that I wasn't alone in my struggles. Embracing the accent. Now let's start with something I found vital: the accent. I remember when I first tried to speak English. I would often hesitate because I worried about how I sounded. But here's what I learned. Having an accent is normal. Instead of viewing it as a barrier, I embraced it as part of my identity. To improve my accent, I began listening closely to native speakers. I watched movies and TV shows, repeating lines to get the pronunciation just right. It was like having a conversation with my favorite characters. One day, I watched a scene in Friends where Ross said, "We were on a break." I loved how he delivered that line. I paused the video, repeated it a few times, and eventually I felt more confident speaking. Remember, it's about practice and having fun with it. The magic of reading. Next, let's talk about reading. I discovered that reading was like opening a door to a new world filled with ideas, vocabulary, and styles. I started with simple books, and as I gained confidence, I moved on to more complex stories. One of my favorite books was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. The language was rich, yet I could see how every word was carefully chosen to convey emotion and character. Reading aloud was a game changer for me. It helped me with my pronunciation and rhythm. I'd find a cozy corner in my room, pick up a book, and read passages until I felt the words flowing effortlessly. It was like having a conversation with myself, and over time I became more comfortable expressing my thoughts in English. Writing as expression. Now let's not forget about writing. It was my way of expressing my inner thoughts and feelings. I kept a journal where I wrote about my day, my dreams, and even my frustrations. Writing helped me organize my thoughts in English, and soon I found myself crafting short stories and sharing them online. One night, I wrote about my dream to travel the world. I imagined myself in Paris, sipping coffee at a cafe, surrounded by beautiful architecture. Putting my dreams into words made them feel more achievable. And guess what? As I wrote more, my vocabulary expanded. I began to use phrases I never thought I could, and it felt empowering. Finding joy in music. And then there's music. Oh, how I love music. Songs became my teachers. I discovered that listening to music in English not only made learning enjoyable but also helped with pronunciation and vocabulary. I remember jamming to "Someone Like You" by Adele, singing along until I knew every word. The lyrics resonated with me, and I felt a connection to the emotions behind them. Creating playlists became a fun activity. I curated a list of songs that inspired me, like "Count on Me" by Bruno Mars and "Shape of You" by Ed Sheeran. I would listen to them while driving, cooking, or just chilling at home. It was like having a personal soundtrack to my language learning journey. I also realized that learning English is not just about grammar and vocabulary. It's about finding your voice, expressing yourself, and connecting with others. Each element, accent, reading, writing, and music, plays a crucial role in building confidence and fluency. Exploring challenges. The fear of speaking. As I delved deeper into my English learning journey, I encountered another significant hurdle: the fear of speaking. I remember the first time I had to speak English in a group setting. My heart raced, palms sweat, and I felt like everyone was watching me, waiting for me to mess up. This fear held me back for a long time, making me hesitant to participate in conversations or join language exchange meetups. To tackle this fear, I began to practice speaking in a more controlled environment. I recorded myself reading short paragraphs from my favorite books or even my own thoughts. Listening to the recordings helped me identify areas for improvement and gradually boosted my confidence. I also sought out online speaking clubs where I could practice with other learners in a supportive atmosphere. These experiences taught me that vulnerability is part of growth, and making mistakes is not only okay, it's essential. In addition to structured study, I discovered that learning could be joyful. I incorporated games into my routine, such as vocabulary bingo or language apps that turned learning into a fun challenge. I would set daily goals for myself, like learning 5 new words and using them in sentences throughout the day. This made the process interactive and enjoyable, keeping my motivation high. One of my favorite activities was watching English movies and series with subtitles. This practice not only improved my listening skills but also exposed me to different accents and slang. I found myself laughing at comedic moments in shows like Friends and relating to the characters' experiences, which made learning feel less like a chore and more like an engaging story. Learning a language is more than just mastering vocabulary and grammar. It's about understanding the culture behind it. I started exploring English-speaking cultures through documentaries, travel vlogs, and cooking shows. I learned about traditions, customs, and, of course, delicious recipes. Trying my hand at cooking traditional dishes from various English-speaking countries not only improved my language skills but also deepened my appreciation for the cultures I was studying. One particularly memorable experience was trying to make an English breakfast. I followed a YouTube tutorial, struggling with the pronunciation of some ingredients. But the laughter and learning that came from this mishap made it all worthwhile. I realized that immersing myself in the culture was just as important as studying the language itself. Embracing online resources. In today's digital age, there's an abundance of resources available for language learners. I made a list of my favorite websites and apps that helped me on my journey. For instance, platforms like Duolingo and Memrise offered engaging exercises to enhance my vocabulary. YouTube became a treasure trove of knowledge. I followed channels that focused on conversational English and pronunciation. Each video felt like a mini lesson, packed with valuable insights and tips. I particularly enjoyed watching channels that featured real-life conversations, allowing me to see how English is used in everyday situations. Setting realistic goals. As I progressed, I realized the importance of setting realistic goals. Initially, I aimed for fluency overnight, but I soon understood that it's a gradual process. I started breaking down my goals into manageable chunks, like mastering specific tenses or phrases. Celebrating small victories along the way, such as having a 10-minute conversation in English, kept my spirits high. Every week, I would review my goals and adjust them as needed. This flexibility helped me stay motivated and avoid feeling overwhelmed. It became a personal challenge to push myself while acknowledging my progress. The importance of feedback. Feedback became a crucial aspect of my learning. I sought constructive criticism from friends and teachers who spoke English fluently. Their insights helped me identify areas for improvement and encouraged me to refine my pronunciation and grammar. I learned to embrace feedback as a tool for growth rather than a source of embarrassment. I also joined online forums and communities where learners shared their experiences. Engaging in discussions and providing feedback to others made me feel part of a supportive network. This sense of community helped me realize that everyone is on their unique journey, and we can learn from each other. The impact of fluency on my life. Now let's dive deeper into how fluency has transformed my life. As I became more confident in my English skills, I started to pursue opportunities one once thought were beyond my reach. I applied for jobs that required English proficiency, participated in international conferences, and even started this YouTube channel to share my journey with all of you. Fluency has opened doors to meaningful relationships as well. I've connected with people from various cultures, sharing stories, ideas, and experiences that have enriched my life. The ability to communicate effectively has helped me build friendships that transcend language barriers. So, if you're feeling stuck or discouraged, remember that your journey is a beautiful and personal adventure. It's not about how fast you learn. It's about the connections you make and the growth you experience along the way. Every word you learn is a step toward unlocking new opportunities. Now, let me take you on a little adventure. One day, I decided to immerse myself fully in English by taking a spontaneous trip to an English-speaking country. I chose England. What better place to experience the culture and language firsthand? Little did I know that this trip would be filled with hilarious moments and unexpected lessons. When I landed in London, I was filled with excitement and determination. Armed with my trusty phrasebook, I felt like a language warrior ready to conquer the world. My first stop was a quaint cafe in Camden Town. I confidently approached the barista and ordered a large cappuccino with a sprinkle of cinnamon. The barista looked at me, confused, and said, "Do you mean a large cappuccino with cinnamon?" In that moment, I realized that sometimes being too confident can lead to funny misunderstandings. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I laughed it off and embraced the experience. I learned that even the best learners make mistakes, and it's those moments that make our journey memorable. Funny encounters. As I wandered through the streets of London, I encountered quirky locals who had their unique ways of speaking. One evening, I found myself at a pub quiz night, eager to test my knowledge. I joined a team of friendly locals, hoping to impress them with my English skills. When the quizmaster asked, "What's the capital of Australia?" I confidently shouted, "Sydney." The entire pub erupted in laughter, and I turned crimson. I quickly corrected myself. "Can I take that back? I meant Canberra." That night, I learned that humor and humility go hand in hand. The locals welcomed my mistake and even offered to teach me some Australian slang. They introduced me to words like arvo for afternoon and bicky for biscuit. It was hilarious hearing them use these terms in casual conversation. I felt like I was part of an inside joke that made the learning process so much more enjoyable. After that night, I became obsessed with immersing myself in the local culture. I visited museums, galleries, and even joined a cooking class where we made classic English dishes like shepherd's pie. Cooking in English was an experience in itself. I remember trying to follow the recipe while the instructor casually mentioned, "Just throw in a handful of peas." "Excuse me," thought. "What is a handful?" I ended up tossing in what I considered a handful of peas, only to realize I had dumped in an entire can. The instructor burst into laughter and said, "Well, that's one way to do it." My disastrous cooking skills became the highlight of the class, and we all shared a good laugh over our creations. Through my journey, I discovered that humor is a powerful tool for connecting with others. I started using jokes and funny anecdotes in my conversations, which helped ease the tension and made speaking English feel less intimidating. For instance, when trying to remember vocabulary, I created silly rhymes. Two cows in a field. One says moo and the other says who. I would laugh at my own silliness, and soon enough, those phrases stuck with me. The more I laughed, the easier it became to speak without fear. The power of shared experiences. I also found that sharing experiences with other learners was incredibly uplifting. I attended a local English conversation club where everyone was eager to practice. One evening, we decided to share our most embarrassing moments while learning English. The stories that emerged were both hilarious and relatable. One guy shared how he accidentally told his boss, "I have a big crush on you," instead of "I have a big task for you." The room erupted in laughter, and that moment created an instant bond among us. We learned that vulnerability can lead to laughter, and those shared experiences made us all feel more confident in our abilities. Celebrating successes, big and small. As my trip came to an end, I reflected on my journey. I had faced challenges, experienced awkward moments, and shared laughs with new friends. Every step was a lesson that went beyond vocabulary and grammar. It was about connection, culture, and humor. I returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. I realized that becoming fluent in English is not just about speaking perfectly. It's about embracing the journey, learning from mistakes, and finding joy in the process. Utilizing technology. Embracing technology became a game changer for me. I discovered various language learning apps that made practice enjoyable. Duolingo and HelloTalk allowed me to learn new vocabulary and even chat with native speakers. These platforms made me feel like I had a supportive community right at my fingertips. Shadowing technique. I also came across the shadowing technique, where I would listen to a short audio clip and repeat what I heard in real time. This practice improved my pronunciation and helped me think in English. I particularly enjoyed shadowing TED Talks because they provided me with both knowledge and language practice. Networking with others on the same journey was incredibly motivating. I joined English-speaking groups on social media where I could interact with fellow learners. Sharing our experiences and tips created a sense of camaraderie, and we encouraged each other to keep going, even on tough days. Incorporating English into daily life. I realized that to truly integrate English into my life, I needed to use it daily. I started thinking in English and even labeled objects around my home with sticky notes. This simple trick helped reinforce my vocabulary and made English a constant part of my surroundings. Exploring the nuances of English idioms. As I delved deeper into my English learning journey, I discovered the fascinating world of idioms. These expressions often confuse learners because their meanings aren't always clear from the words themselves. For instance, when I first heard someone say, "It's raining cats and dogs," I pictured a scene straight out of a cartoon. But soon I realized it meant it was raining heavily. I started collecting idioms, turning them into a fun game with my friends. We challenge each other to use as many idioms as possible in a single conversation. Imagine this. I was feeling under the weather, but after a warm cup of tea, I was back in the game. Using idioms made my speech more colorful and relatable, and it always sparked laughter and curiosity in conversations. Learning through storytelling. Another effective method I found was storytelling. I started writing short stories in English, which helped me practice grammar and vocabulary in context. I would share these stories with friends during our conversation club, and we'd often create funny, exaggerated tales together. One story involved a cat named Whiskers who wanted to become a famous singer. Whiskers faced challenges, like forgetting the lyrics during performances or accidentally meowing instead of singing. This exercise not only improved my writing but also encouraged creativity, making the learning process enjoyable and memorable. Looking ahead. The future of learning English. Now, as I reflect on my journey, I understand that learning English is a continuous process. Each